There is a curious habit we have, an almost instinctive compulsion, to narrate the unfolding of our lives to anyone willing or unwilling to listen. We speak of our struggles, our joys, our fears, as if by casting them into the world we somehow make them lighter. Yet, in truth, this constant exposition of self rarely enlightens others and often diminishes the clarity of our own thoughts. To speak endlessly of what happens to us is not necessarily to share, but to scatter ourselves into fragments for a world too preoccupied to gather them meaningfully. Consider for a moment the nature of life itself. Life is not a story to be endlessly broadcast, nor a performance to be applauded by an audience. It is a reality to be lived, a path to be navigated, and a mystery to be discovered. When we feel the urge to announce our every trial or triumph, we are not seeking communion, but validation, and that validation is fleeting. The world does not pause for our explanations. It does not wait for our reasons, our confessions, our interpretations. And in this haste to be heard, we risk missing the profoundness of living in quiet observation, in measured contemplation, in the dignity of silent endurance. There is power in restraint. There is a discipline in silence that speaks louder than the most fervent speech. By keeping the inner workings of our lives to ourselves, we allow our actions, our character, our resilience to bear witness instead. The world is generous with opinion, but stingy with understanding. And so, when we choose not to explain ourselves, we maintain a kind of sovereignty over our experiences. We guard the sacredness of our struggles, the intimacy of our joys, and the truth of our journeys. Furthermore, the act of constant disclosure can diminish the very lessons we hope to convey. Reflection is born in solitude. Insight is cultivated in the private chambers of thought. Each time we rush to articulate every detail of our lives, we risk leaving behind the depth, the subtlety, the intricate textures that only silence can nurture. Those who truly wish to know us, who truly wish to be near, will see and understand more in our quiet acts of courage than in our loudest confessions. The discipline of not telling is not denial. It is an embrace of dignity. It is recognition that life does not require constant commentary. It is an understanding that the mind and soul are nourished not by the applause of others, but by the integrity with which we carry our burdens, the honesty with which we meet our challenges, and the grace with which we navigate the invisible currents that shape our being. There is an inner freedom in choosing to experience life without the need for constant explanation. There is a serenity in allowing our thoughts to mature unspoken, in letting our deeds serve as testimony, and in preserving the sanctity of our personal narrative. By not telling, we become stewards of our own journey, guardians of our own soul, and witnesses to the subtle miracles that occur in the quiet spaces between words. Speak less, live more. Let your actions reveal your story. There is a profound difference between living life and narrating it. Too often, we fall into the habit of speaking about our experiences as if they need validation from others, as if our trials and triumphs require an audience to be meaningful. Yet life is not a stage, and we are not actors performing for applause. Our actions carry a weight and significance that words can rarely capture. When we speak less and live more, we allow the essence of our character to emerge through what we do, not through what we say. Consider the person who endures hardship quietly, who faces challenges without announcing them to the world. Their courage, their resilience, their integrity. These qualities are visible to those who pay attention, and they resonate far deeper than any story could. Words, though powerful, are often fleeting. They can be misunderstood, misinterpreted, or forgotten entirely. Actions, however, are enduring. A single act of kindness, a moment of honesty, a demonstration of patience or perseverance, speaks to the world with a clarity that explanations never achieve. Living more and speaking less is not about withdrawing from society or refusing to communicate. It is about choosing discernment in how and when we express ourselves. It is about recognizing that our presence, our decisions, and our conduct are the true reflections of who we are. In silence, we cultivate observation, attentiveness, and thoughtfulness. We become aware of subtleties in life, of the nuances in relationships, and of the small but profound impacts our behavior has on others. Speaking less allows us to absorb life in its fullness, to witness without filtering our experiences through the need for approval or sympathy. Moreover, it teaches humility. To act without the expectation of recognition is to embrace a deeper form of satisfaction, one that is rooted in authenticity rather than external validation. When we choose this path, we begin to understand the power of restraint. We see that the world often offers more attention to words than to deeds, yet it is the deeds that leave a lasting impression. The discipline of living fully, quietly, intentionally, becomes a source of strength, shaping us into individuals whose lives themselves are compelling, whose influence arises naturally from the integrity and depth of their actions, and whose presence in the world conveys far more than words ever. Good silence preserves dignity and nurtures inner strength. There is a profound strength in silence that many overlook in a world obsessed with expression. To remain quiet, to hold one's thoughts and experiences inward, is not weakness or avoidance. It is a deliberate act of self-respect and inner cultivation. Silence allows the mind to reflect without interruption, to weigh experience against principle, and to discern meaning without the distortion of external opinions. When we speak constantly about our lives, our triumphs, or our struggles, we risk scattering our essence into fragments for others to misinterpret or dismiss. Words, though powerful, are subject to the fickleness of perception, and even our most heartfelt expressions may fail to convey the depth of our experience. In contrast, silence preserves dignity. It guards the sacredness of personal experience, maintaining a boundary between what is intimate and what is casual. By choosing not to explain, not to justify, and not to narrate endlessly, we retain a sovereignty over our own journey, a quiet authority that cannot be taken or questioned lightly. Furthermore, silence cultivates observation and discernment. It sharpens the mind to notice subtleties in human behavior, in the world around us, and in the patterns of our own hearts. In these quiet spaces, understanding arises naturally, insights form unforced, and clarity emerges where once there was only noise. There is also an enduring lesson in restraint. The world often confuses volume with importance, assuming that the person who speaks the most knows the most or feels the deepest. Yet true wisdom is frequently found in those who speak little, who listen attentively, and who act deliberately. Their lives communicate more than words ever could, and their influence is measured not by applause, but by the enduring effect of their integrity, kindness, and thoughtfulness. Choosing silence is a form of self-discipline, a recognition that life does not demand constant commentary, and that the maturation of the soul often occurs away from the public gaze. It is in quiet reflection that character strengthens, perspective broadens, and resilience takes root. By refraining from unnecessary exposition, we create room for authenticity to flourish, for patience to develop, and for the quiet beauty of understanding to emerge naturally. Those who master the art of silence discover a freedom that speaking endlessly cannot provide, a freedom to experience life fully, to think deeply, and to act with intention, allowing their presence and their choices to testify to their inner life rather than the fleeting words they might have offered. True understanding comes from observing, not explaining. Understanding comes not from the stories we tell, but from the careful observation of life as it unfolds. There is a subtle difference between sharing experiences for connection and constantly narrating them in search of validation. Too often, we fall into the trap of believing that explaining ourselves will make our lives more understandable, more appreciated, or more meaningful to others. Yet true understanding is rarely achieved through words alone. People see, feel, and intuit far more than they hear, and the depth of their comprehension depends on the witness of action, the patience of observation, and the quietness of reflection. When we speak incessantly about our circumstances, we risk creating a barrier rather than a bridge. We substitute explanation for experience, and in doing so, we dilute the authenticity of what we live through. The act of observing without the compulsion to explain is a practice of profound respect for oneself and for others. It allows life to unfold naturally without the distortion of self-conscious narration, and it permits others to engage with us honestly without being influenced by prepackaged interpretations of our thoughts and feelings. Moreover, understanding arises in the spaces between words. It is in the shared silence, in the subtle gestures, in the consistent patterns of behavior, that the deepest truths are revealed. Those who insist on telling everything often overlook the power of presence. Presence, unaccompanied by commentary, communicates reliability, empathy, and sincerity far more convincingly than any speech ever could. When we refrain from constant disclosure, we give ourselves the gift of integrity. We cultivate a life that is coherent in its actions, not fragmented by endless attempts to justify or explain. Others begin to trust not our stories, but our steadiness, our principles, and the quiet ways we demonstrate our values. The wisdom of restraint also teaches patience. The world is eager to judge, quick to comment, and swift to form opinions based on partial understanding. By withholding the urge to narrate every detail, we protect our experiences from misinterpretation, preserve the dignity of our journey, and create the possibility for authentic engagement on terms that are meaningful and intentional. Furthermore, choosing not to disclose everything fosters humility. It reminds us that not every thought, struggle, or triumph requires recognition, and that the truest measure of our lives is not in the applause we receive, but in the integrity with which we navigate our personal path. In this way, understanding is reciprocal. Those who observe with care, who listen attentively, and who act with consistency often elicit a deeper comprehension from others than those who speak incessantly. By allowing life itself to serve as testimony, by permitting our actions to bear witness instead of our words, we cultivate relationships, respect, and influence that are grounded in reality rather than rhetoric. True understanding, therefore, is cultivated in silence, nurtured by observation, and confirmed through the quiet yet powerful testimony of our deeds, the coherence of our character, and the authenticity of our lived experience.